Hi, beautiful, beloved souls. It's Jem talking, and I just realized I've just uploaded a video on channeling through automatic writing, and I realized something very important. But before I get into that, I first have to explain something to you. When I talk about my psychic abilities, I've told you that when it comes to channeling, it's like there's this radio station and voices talking to me. Now, some of you may say, that sounds like a mental illness, Jem. And I want to let you know that very early on in my life, I thought, oh, hearing voices, yep, I've got schizophrenia. No, trigger, I'm not putting anyone down, or because I actually do have mental health issues and I'm very happy to share them. I suffer borderline personality disorder, and I've got post-traumatic stress disorder and general anxiety. So at the time, I thought I have a schizophrenic or bipolar. So, and not only that, my mother had always said I was mental. And I thought, great, if I'm mental and I'm insane, I'll go along, I'll get certified, and I'm not responsible for anything I've done in my life. Because if you're mentally incompetent, how can you be responsible for the bad things you've done? So I thought, yeah, that'd be great. So off I went to the local mental health place, and I told them that I heard voices, but knowing they, investigated further and knowing that I was psychic, do you know what they said to me? Jem, you're quite sane. The only issue you've got is childhood trauma and suggest you go get counselling. I went, oh, damn. Now I have to take responsibility for everything because they've just told me I'm not insane. So every bad thing I've done, every good thing, I'm all responsible for. But anyway, the reason why I brought that up is because I explained that when you're doing channeling, you're listening to a voice or voices, and it comes from a place of love. It's your soul connection. But I have to be very careful here because there is mental illness where people do hear voices. And this is where we have to make a distinguishment. If you're hearing voices that are telling you to do evil or harmful things, especially to yourself or to others, I would go and tell my doctor. I wouldn't think that is being psychic. And this is why I thought I had to quickly make a second video because, it is a matter of discernment. For example, I'm going to go and use a Christian example here. In the Old Testament, God challenged Abraham by saying, sacrifice your son Isaac. And an angel came down, as you know, Abraham was about to sacrifice Isaac and said, no, God shown, you've proven yourself to God. Now, modern times, there has been people who thought they've heard God tell them to do something, and off they've gone and they've murdered their children, murdered their spouse because they've heard the voice of God. Sometimes they say they hear the voice of the devil. When I do automatic writing, I don't claim, like some people, for example, I'll name Jane Roberts. She channeled Seth, and other people channel other entities. My entities said, Jen, it's you, your higher self. And this is what I want to talk about, where the distinguish between channeling and mental illness is what the writing says. Now, having said that, you can channel negative stuff and be mentally competent. This is why you always need protection, because when you are doing channeling, it is easy to connect to any type of entity, and that entity can be negative, dangerous, vibrating at a low frequency. And at the start of my automatic writing journey, I didn't do any protection, and that's why I got rubbish and negative stuff. But as soon as I started to do with intent of getting truth, of getting the truth and information that was for the higher self, then my writing started to, show that. Again, I need to tell you that when you channel, you can channel bad things, because if you're channeling a prediction of a bad thing, that doesn't mean that it's come from a bad place. That can mean it's come from source. And for me, source is divine love. And there's a lesson in that. So in my video that's being uploaded at the moment, I just channeled that an earthquake. And you might say that's negative. But no, source of love is telling us, that in this game of life, there are good and bad things that happen. But I did have to make a video that if you are getting messages where if they are telling you to do evil things, it could be mental illness. And I would tell the doctor, I would say, so for example, let's just say I'm writing and the voice said, Jem, go, do some self-harm to yourself. I would immediately go and tell my doctor, especially because I suffer borderline personality disorder, and self-harm is one of the signs and symptoms. I would definitely know if I was writing that was mental illness. Does that make sense? But it's very hard, isn't it, when I just used the concept of God testing Abraham. And people today, genuinely think they've heard God, and they've gone and done evil things. So the Bible says, test by the fruits. If it comes from a place of love, it is love. And even though you can be predicting bad things, because an earthquake is not necessarily a bad thing. An earthquake is a natural disaster that the earth goes through. So I'm trying to make it very clear here. If this is why some psychics are very good at solving crimes. And they come from a good place, they're using protection. But if you're hearing stuff that is really dark, question it, question you. Some people do hear voices, and it is mental illness. I went and got, I told you I really did want to accept my mother's labeling of me that I was mentally ill, because then wasn't responsible. But no, I was told, Jem, you're very sane. You need counselling for all the things that happened to you as a child. And I did go and get counselling for that. But yes, it's all about discernment, and it's all about what you put out there, because, of course, some people would label this, some religious people would label any type of channeling as of the devil, because that's a Christian belief. But like I said, I do it from a place of love. And usually I'll just grab my book. Usually my writings because I only did a very quick writing just to show you what I was doing. But usually it greets me, and when it ends, I'm just trying to find an end. I'm reading where it's talking about the comet coming, and it always greets me with welcome, Jem. And usually at the end, it will say goodbye and love, something to that effect. It depends. Sometimes I'll end it before it's finished, because I'm getting tired. And sometimes if you're doing a lot and lots of writing, it can get very, very tiring. So here we are. Yes, that would stop you from filtering what first written. Okay, we talk later. Loving blessings. See, that's how it ends. And I'll show you again, because last time you couldn't clearly see. It is a bit hard to see. That is not my writing. I'll try and get it up as close as possible. It's a kind of a mixture. So I basically allow, if you're stiff with your hand, you're not going to write. And at first, when you first start, as I said, you might just start writing, it's all about practice. All right, I really did have to make this video that any weird, evil messages must be investigated further, because there's a fine line between channeling and mental illness. And I know that of a remote viewer who has friends who channel, and he said that those friends actually went mad. So he doesn't have, this particular remote viewer is very famous. He's on YouTube, and he doesn't have a very good opinion of people who channel. And it's all about protection. And that's what I do nowadays. I protect myself always. And it doesn't matter whether you're using a Ouija board, whether you're doing automatic drawing. And when I said you can do automatic anything, you could be making clay and allowing spirit to make the clay. It's just, how can I put it? You just allow. It sounds creepy when I say allow yourself to be taken over, but I can't explain it any better than that. You just allow your mind to be used. That's the best way I can talk about it. But again, when it comes to stuff that is, like when I mentioned Abraham and Isaac, if that happened in today's world, Abraham would have got locked up in the mental ward, because that's not acceptable. So that's what I'm trying to say. There is a difference between channeling and mental illness, and I think it's very important to make that distinction. I think if you think you have a health issue, if you think, and sometimes people can hear voices say beautiful things. I worked as a nurse, and one of the mental patients said to me, Jem, God came to see me in the form of a butterfly. Now that's beautiful, but he was not sane. So I would have a really, decent relationship with my doctor and GP, and make sure that you are fine, that you are mentally fine, that you are physically fine, that you are emotionally fine. Anything which, if you're still dealing with trauma, you're still dealing with pain, you're still dealing with toxicity, that will come out in your writing, your channeling, whatever you do in the spirit world, that will come out, because like attracts like. So if you're still in a very fearful, anxious, toxic, drama place, you're going to attract lower entities, and you have to discern. So it's about intent, discernment, and where you're coming from, and that's intent as well. Intent, when I write, I say I'm coming from a place of love, and I always get protection. All right, another day I will follow up with part 2 of my psychic abilities, but I think I've probably covered them with these 2 automatic writings. But if you want me to do a follow-up, please drop a comment below. Cherish every moment. Take care of yourselves and each other. Love, light, and blessings. Bye.